This week we'll turn our attention to Stonewall. This is, of course, the trans lobby group who gets taxpayers' cash to offer diversity training, amongst other things. Tell me what's been going on with this.
That's right. So we sent out a big Freedom of Information request to about 400 public bodies, so government departments, local authorities, quangos, NHS bodies, and we wanted to ask how much money they're getting from taxpayers for their diversity champion scheme. And this has been in the news quite a lot recently.
Yes,
there was,
it has
example,
indeed.
Department of International Trade, which has said they're leaving it. Quite a few other departments, quangos said they're leaving it, and part of that scheme is basically to tell employers, or advise employers rather, things about use of pronouns, gender-neutral toilets, and so on and so forth. So that's sort of a current scheme which Stonewall is getting on with. Now, obviously, a lot of taxpayers might find that brilliant work, a lot of people might find that not so brilliant work, but ultimately you and I as taxpayers don't have a say in terms of what kind of money is going to Stonewall. And we see that across the public sector, that quite a few other charities and third sector organisations, which might be doing wonderful, noble work, I might think, and someone might disagree with me, I don't have a choice in terms of what my money is actually going towards. We wanted to really sort of shine a light on the work that Stonewall is doing at the moment and sort of really make the point that a lot of this taxpayer-funded lobbying, which is essentially what it is just not reasonable. So that should end as soon as possible. So
talk figures to me. Do you know just roughly how much we're spending on this kind of stuff?
Sure. So it was just over £3 million over a 3-year period, so just over £1 million a year. And that's part of Stonewall's income. So they also get money from donations from members of the public. They also get grants as well from taxpayer-owned organisations as well. As I said, the Diversity Champion Scheme is a part of their income. It's not the entirety of it. I think the 2019 account showed their total income of almost £8 million. So it's a chunk of their revenue. It's not the entirety of their revenue, but it's pretty large. We also know that it's not just taxpayer-owned organisations, public bodies. Around about half of the members of the Diversity Champion schemes, they're actually private organisations, private businesses. And that's up to private businesses if they want to go and do that. All power to them. If the shareholders have a concern about that, then shareholders can raise that. But ultimately, as I said, you and I don't have a choice of taxpayers in terms of what our money is going towards and whether Stonewall is a good or bad idea. We don't have a say over that. Yeah,
but I think there has been some conversation. I mean, my take on this, there seems to be no shortage of lobby groups that seem to find problems in society because they benefit from problems being in society. So Stonewall did great work with gay rights, etc. Great work, and then they diversified and started becoming this trans lobby, which is so many groups are just desperate to find problems, and to me it's like you're desperate to try and divide us, you're desperate to try and create these problems, and they need to exist, these problems, for the sake of these groups. And Stonewall, you mentioned, I think that I don't know if it was Priti Patel, I know that one of the senior government ministers was saying actually about withdrawing from these schemes going forward because they create, I repeat myself, but I just find them so divisive. Guys, what's your view on this?
I think you're absolutely right, Michelle. And it's a very important point that these are self-perpetuating businesses, effectively, these sort of NGOs and charities. And, I really like Duncan's point about who decided. We didn't get to say this is how our money should be spent. In the 60s, and 70s, Stonewall was really important for advancing gay liberation. You're absolutely right. But what is this minority trans thing and this diversity training, which assumes we punters are all nasty, homophobic, anti-trans individuals needing the re-education at taxpayers' expense? I don't think so.
Francis?
I think the problem with this is that it's patronising. A lot of people grow up, especially in 21st century Britain, they have friends of different races, colours, creeds, genders, sexualities, etc., etc. So when you go to these diversity trainings and you have someone effectively lecture you on how not to be racist, sexist, homophobic, people feel patronised and angry, and quite rightly so. And in fact, there's actually been studies done that it actually lowers tolerance because you get people's backs up.
And I think it's almost kind of, I've got a little boy and I see him play with children and he doesn't care what the children are, their backgrounds, their race, their skin color. He just plays with a kid because they're playing with the same ball or whatever it is that they're doing at the time. And I do think that there's an awful lot of organisations that exist purely to find problems, magnify problems, because without these problems, their funding stops, their existence is no longer required. So it's in their interest, and there are many. It's not just about trans. There's another story as well, the health tourism story. Duncan, tell me briefly about that, if you will.
Sure. So numbers came out last year which showed, I think, the sort of cost of health tourism was £40 million. That's essentially means sort of hospital bills which have been unpaid. I think there was one example where Spaniard received lots of cancer treatment. I think it came to about £200,000. I think just by using a friend's address in the UK, which meant that he was able to sort of escape the charges which were actually initially levied. So a lot of people are sort of trying this. I think another couple of examples, for example, in Durham and Darlington, I think 8 mothers, sort of new mothers, obviously got treatment to have a child. I think it came to about £40,000. I think one individual listed a Premier in the North East as their address. So essentially, a lot of people who are coming to the UK are getting free treatment. I mean, it's free because those charges have been levied, but they haven't ultimately been paid. And we've seen quite a few of those examples over many years, but particularly last year there was a huge increase. I think it rose by about £10 million. So that's sort of the thin end of the wedge of quite a few examples of NHS waste and bad practice, which are definitely avoidable. I mean, there are charges if you're not British and using the NHS, you should be paying for the healthcare which you're actually using. But time and again we see that bureaucracy sort of fails us, and they're not actually the charge isn't actually being levied against these people in the end.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I can't imagine going to various different foreign countries and just leveraging a healthcare system and being able to do so without picking up the tab. So interesting. Thank you very much for your time.